South Africa, a land of stark beauty, a place where the golden savannas stretch out as far as the eye can see, where rugged mountain ranges stand tall and proud, and where the coastline seems to stretch on forever, meeting the horizon in a seamless blend of sky and sea. South Africa, known for its breathtaking landscapes and vibrant culture, has a darker side. The country has been haunted by some of the most notorious serial killers in history. Today we delve into the countdown of the gruesome serial killers in history, starting with number 10. Before we start with the countdown, please like and subscribe to the channel. Number 10. Louis Van Schoor, aka the Apartheid Killer, 7 murders confirmed, 1986 to 1989, born in 1951. At the age of 35, Louis Van Schoor took the term trigger-happy to a whole new level. Starting his career out as a police officer and ending up as a security guard, Van Schoor was convicted of 7 murders in 1992. Before his conviction, it was thought that he killed as many as 39 people. He even admitted to shooting 100 people after setting traps for them in the form of silent alarms. He was known as an apartheid killer since he only murdered black victims. Alarmingly, Van Schoor's daughter apparently inherited her father's murderous genes. Sabrina Van Schoor hired a hitman to murder her own mother in 2002. She was caught, convicted, and handed a life sentence. Contrary to her father, Sabrina believed her mother was a racist and deserved to die. Louis Van Schoor and his daughter ended up in the same prison. Curiously, Louis only served 12 years of his 20-year prison sentence. He was released on parole in 2004, leaving his daughter behind to serve the rest of her life term. Van Schoor walked out of prison smiling, ready to marry his 5th wife and go farming. Number 9. Petros Madiba, 9 murders, 2012. Petros Madiba, who was 29 in 2012 during his killing spree, not only murdered 8 women and a baby, but he also put the blame for his horrific crimes on them. For each murder, he had a different story. First, he claimed that 6 of the women were in a relationship with him at some point. He admitted to killing all 8 women, but said it was because they either stole from him or cheated on him. His reason for murdering the little baby girl and her mother was that he allegedly found out the child was not his, as the mother claimed. However, the family of the woman confirmed this to be a lie, saying she met him the same day he killed her. Tragically, Madiba committed these murders while on bail for yet another murder. In October 2013, Madiba was sentenced to 10 life imprisonment sentences and 105 years on robbery aggravating. He was found guilty on a total of 9 murders, 8 ladies and 1 young child, 7 robbery aggravating, and 1 rape. Number 8. Stuart Wilkin, aka Boer, 10 murders, 1990 to 1997. Stuart Wilkin, born in 1966, preyed on the street children and women of Port Elizabeth, Eastern Cape from 1990 to 1997. His first wife, Lynn, narrated how she was in a very abusive relationship with Wilken, whom she had a son. After the birth of their son, Wilken would only have anal sex with her in unusual and discomforting positions. Wilken confessed to murdering 10 people, including his 11-year-old daughter, and 5 counts of sodomy. But the state prosecutor failed to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that the 2 skeletons and a decomposed body found where Wilken said he had sodomized and killed 3 street children were those of his victims. Wilken also admitted to eating the flesh of one of his victims in a crazed drug state after becoming addicted to daga and mandrax. He cut off the nipples of his 4th victim, a 42-year-old woman, and swallowed them. Wilken, during testimony in court, gave a graphic, detailed account of how in the act of strangling his victims, he experienced sexual climax, even if the victim was dead. On one occasion, returned to the dead body of his victim to have sex with it. Wilken was sentenced to 7 terms of life imprisonment. Number 7. Richard Jabulani Nyauza, aka The Quarry Killer, 16 murders, 2002 to 2006. Born in 1970, Richard started his gruesome act after testing positive for HIV in 2002. Shortly after murdering his 5th victim, Nyauza was arrested for attempting to rape his girlfriend's 9-year-old daughter. In November 2005, he was found not guilty and released. 5 weeks later, he resumed committing crimes. The body of his sixth victim was found on the 2nd of January 2006. Although she had been strangled as opposed to Nyauza's previous method of bludgeoning his victims, the killing was quickly linked to the others because of its close proximity to the 2002 murders. A task force was formed in May to apprehend the perpetrator after 5 more victims had been found. Nyauza lured his victims, all black women, by offering them jobs. He then murdered them, and sometimes raped them, after the two reached a secluded location. As time passed, Nyauza switched from prominently bludgeoning his victims with stones, and in one case a plank of wood, to strangling them. In some cases he stabbed victims with a screwdriver. In every case, Nyauza took the murder weapon with him, rather than leaving it at the crime scene. 14 of the 16 victims were found fully or partially naked, and Nyauza's semen was recovered from 4 of them. Following his trial, he was found guilty and given 16 life sentences, as well an additional 140 years imprisonment. Number 6. Jack Mogul aka West End serial killer, 16 murders, 2008 to 2009. A pretentious preacher who would don a Zion Christian Church badge or Sangoma beads, claiming to be a prophet sent by God to heal would-be clients. He struck his victims with blunt objects, tied them with their underwear, beat them with bricks, then raped and strangled them. Many of his victims were found partially naked near the West End clay bricks factory in Zurbacom where Mogul lived. He was arrested in March 2009. Mogul was caught using DNA evidence admissions of 2 women who survived his killing spree. It was his fiancée, the main state witness Charlotte Manaka, who gave a testimony, contradicting all Mogale's evidence that helped the state to secure his convictions. Mogale denied all the charges against him and claimed that he was framed by the police. One of his alleged victims was 19 years old when Mogale tattered her face with a brick while raping her in an open field in Weston area. She testified that she had accepted a lift from Mogul and only realized that she was in danger when he took the wrong turn and became aggressive when she asked where they were going. After the rape, Mogale left her unconscious and bleeding in the field. She only woke up the following day and crawled to a nearby road where she was able to get help. Bodies of his victims were mostly left in sexual positions, naked. At the time of arrest, he showed his manhood to a policewoman and said, "When I come out from here, you will be the first person I rape and kill." During his trial, Mogul sat smiling, grinning, and even laughed out loud. Mogul was found guilty of 9 kidnappings, 19 rapes, 16 murders, 3 robberies with aggravating circumstances, sexual assault, and an escape from lawful custody, sentenced to 16 life imprisonment sentences with no possibility of parole. 5. Christopher Zikode aka Donnybrook serial killer, 18 murders, 1994 to 1995. Born in 1974 in KwaZulu-Natal, Christopher began his killing when he was 20 years old, making him the youngest serial killer on this list. He grew up witnessing his family fight ferociously with the enemy tribe. He even learned how to use modernized guns during the fight. His father taught him all sorts of defense artworks along with a detailed course on how to kill a human clean. Never did he know that his son would turn into an expert serial killer. Zikode grew up to be one of the finest fighters in their tribal group. However, his aim was not to diminish the rival tribes. His mother had died while giving birth to him, hence he was taken care of by the men in his family. His modus operandi was to choose the women from church reception, locate their house and kick the door in, to everyone's shock. As a precautionary and first step, he would shoot all the men and boys of the house until they were dead. Later, he would drag the women onto the plantation fields nearby and rape them for up to 5 hours constantly. If any of them tried to resist him, he would shoot and kill them at first and later perform sexual intercourse with the dead bodies, known as necrophilia. He committed 18 murders, 5 rapes, 5 attempted murders, and 1 indecent assault. Zikode was charged with over 21 crimes, and his case was cracked open by South Africa's finest forensic profiler and psychologist, Dr. Mickey Pistorius. His file was studied and he helped in the proceedings that followed Zikode's arrest. According to Pistorius, Zikode possessed a sexual urgency that was carved out of ruthless torture and inhumanity. He enjoyed torturing women while performing intercourse with them. Zikode was sentenced to 5 life sentences, totaling 140 years in prison for Thwala AKA Phoenix Strangler, 19 murders, 1996 to 1997. Thwala, born in 1968, started his gruesome killings at the age of 28, became the most wanted man in KwaZulu-Natal during a year-long killing spree in the sugarcane fields of Mount Edgecombe, near the small Phoenix, Durban. The killer's modus operandi was to lure his victims into sugarcane farms, promising jobs as domestic servants in nearby hotels, rape and kill them using their underwear to tie them, then strangle and bludgeon them to death before burying them in shallow graves. His murders began gaining attention because he was very public about erasing evidence. He would set alight the sugarcane field he had just murdered his victim in to destroy all traces of the crime. He was acquitted of rape and murder charges in 1994, the same year the first victim was found in a cane field. Thwala was arrested in 1997 after the South African police matched his DNA sample with the one found on one of his victims. On March 31, 1999, the High Court Durban found Thwala guilty of 19 murders and 16 rapes between 1996 to 1997. He was sentenced to 506 years in prison. Number 3. Bulelani Maaii, aka Monster of Tholeni, 20 murders. Bulelani Maaii, born in 1974, he started terrorizing Tholeni when he was 33 years old in 2007. His victims were mainly women and children. Mabhayi would break into houses at night where there were no men. He would rape his vulnerable victims, 11 women and 9 children, and then kill them with a panga or an axe. His youngest victim was 14 months old and his eldest was 79 years old, 17. In 2011, shoe prints accidentally smeared in one of his victims' bloods led to Mabhayi's arrest. He has an abnormal large shoe print, which was not common in the village. In 2012, Mabhayi was sentenced to 25 life sentences after pleading guilty to 36 charges, 20 of murder, 6 of rape, and 10 of housebreaking. Tholeni is an isolated village between 2 major cities in the Eastern Cape province. This made tracking Mabhayi down a difficult task. Forced to extreme measures, the police took fingerprints and DNA samples from hundreds of males in Tholeni. However, Mabhayi did not have an identity document and his fingerprints couldn't be matched to anything. By that time, the monster had already murdered 15 victims. He simply carried on and killed 5 more people before he made a mistake. Leaving his shoe print behind next to his last victim meant the end of his reign of terror in 2011. Number 2. Cedric Maake, aka the Wemmer Pan Killer, 27 murders. Cedric was born in 1965 in Limpopo province. Cedric left school in grade 10 and went to Johannesburg to seek employment to help his family after the death of his father. Maake was one of South Africa's most elusive serial killers, as he constantly changed his modus operandi. A married father of 4 children and a part-time painter. In some cases, he shot couples to death in their own cars, and in others, he bludgeoned his victims to death with rocks. Maake was described as a unique serial killer. Unlike most multiple murderers, he did not fixate on one type of victim or method, and his motives remain a mystery. His victims ranged from a 74-year-old tailor he murdered with a hammer to a 15-year-old teenager on her way home from a disco with her boyfriend. Cedric started his killing spree between 1996 and 1997, in which he murdered more than 27 people. When the police first caught smoke of his dealings, they suspected that there are 2 separate killers due to different patterns. During the investigation of Maake's murders, 2 separate criminal profiles were created. One for the Wemmer Pan murderer and one for hammer murders. His first murder victim was Dansuklal Patel, who died in hospital after Maake bludgeoned him with a hammer and stole his wallet. The Wemmer Pan murders involved several patterns of victims. The first were men and women walking alone whom Maake bludgeoned to death with rocks. The second group of Wemmer Pan victims were couples in cars around the Wemmer Pan area whom Maake would assault, shooting the men and raping the women. The second criminal profile the police created involved murders of tailors in the inner city area, killed in their shops with hammers. The connection between the Wemmer murders and the hammer killings were made by Superintendent Piet Bijleveld on the 12th of January 1998. Maake took Bijleveld to a pawn shop in La Rochelle in the south of Johannesburg, where he had sold the bicycle of Gerhard Lavaux, a victim in the Wemmer murders, for R120. The alias he used on the receipt was Patrick Mokoena, the same alias he had used to check in a shirt at one of the tailors before Maake murdered him. Maake was arrested in December 1997 as a suspect of the Wemmer murders, and initially acknowledged responsibility for the crimes. He cooperated with police officers on several occasions to lead them around the vicinity and point out the locations of his crimes. Maake was charged with 36 counts of murder, 28 attempted murders, 15 counts of rape, 46 counts of aggravated robbery, and other offenses relating to the unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition. In court, Maake pleaded not guilty to all charges. 1 month after his arrest, he confessed to the hammer murders. On the 6th of September 2000, he was convicted of 27 murders, 26 attempted murders, 14 rapes, 41 aggravated robberies, and many more less serious offenses. He was found guilty of 114 of 134 charges in all, and was sentenced to 27 life sentences, 1 life sentence for each murder, plus 1159 years and 3 months imprisonment. In total, his sentence amounted to 1,340 years in prison. Number 1. The most evil serial killer in South African history is Moses Sithole, aka The ABC Killer. 38 murders confirmed. Moses Sithole was born in Vosloorus, a poor neighborhood of Boksburg, Gauteng, South Africa. His father died when he was 5 soon after his mother abandoned him and the family. Sithole and his siblings spent the next 3 years in an orphanage home where they were mistreated. He ran back to his mother, who sent him back to the orphanage. He began raping women in his 20s. Arrested after the 3rd rape, he was sent to prison for rape. Whilst in prison, Sithole was sexually assaulted by other inmates. In 1994, he was released from prison and began his killing spree, where he murdered more than 38 people between Atteridgeville, Boksburg, and Cleveland, hence the ABC Killer. Sithole modus operandi was baiting women by offering them jobs at a children's home in Benoni. He went as far as to invent a fictional charity organization. Once he had gained their trust, he would offer to walk them through an open field to the business headquarters. He would overpower, rape, and strangle them with their own underwear. In August 1995, Sithole was identified as a potential suspect on the run from the police. He called journalist Tamsin de Beer and identified himself as the wanted killer. A meeting was arranged, but he did not show up because sensed a trap and ran. The police shot him twice when he charged them with an axe, wounding him before taking him into custody. He confessed to all 38 murders, making him the worst serial killer in the history of South Africa. On December 5, 1997, Sithole was sentenced to 2,410 years for the murders of 38 people committed within the year 1994-1995. He committed 40 rapes, which add up to 12 years for each of the 40 rapes, 50 years for each of the 38 murders, and another 5 years for each of the 6 robberies. Sentences do not run concurrently, and no possibility of parole. In 2000, he was reported to have HIV/AIDS in Pretoria prison. Whilst in prison, another trait of Sithole's self-hate was reported. His serious dislike for black women was the major motive in his murder spree, as most of his victims were black women. These serial killers might have killed more than the numbers convicted for. Sithole is said to have killed more than 76 victims.